This week, we'll talk about the Injury, Illness, and Prevention Program, usually abbreviated as IIPP. This is specified in California, in the California Code of Regulations, Title 8, Section 3203. This PowerPoint was generously provided by Carlos Bejar, which is one of the wonderful professors of our program. So let's dig in. So, Cal OSHA mandates that companies, that is, employers, are able to provide and maintain a safe and healthful workplace for the employees. In order to do so, companies are supposed to have a written, effective injury and illness prevention program, which is, as I mentioned previously, specified in Title 8 of the California Code of Regulations. Now, why have an IIPP? Well, taking risks is a part of any given business. Companies usually take risks when developing a new product, when performing marketing or advertising activities, when performing research activities to stay competitive. However, when it comes to the safety and health of employees, some risks are just not worth the gamble. Why? Because accidents cost money. One lost workday injury has a significant cost. First, you have the productive time that is lost by the injured employee. Then you have the productive time that is lost by the other employees and supervisors that are attending the accident victim. Then you have cleanup and startup costs of operations, which are of course being interrupted by the accident. And then you need, of course, time to hire or to retrain other individuals to replace the injured worker until his or her return. And then you have, of course, workers' compensation liability. Overall, it's more cost. Accidents are incredibly costly. So it's safer to have an effective injury and illness prevention program to prevent the accidents from happening. Some other additional costs involve, for instance, the time and cost for repair or replacement of any damaged equipment or materials, the reduced morale among the employees, perhaps lower efficiency, as I mentioned, the workers' compensation insurance rates, and all the costs of completing paperwork generated by the incident. Now, we've been saying IIPP several times now, but what is it? An IIPP is a written plan that includes procedures and is put into practice. The sections that are required include management commitment or assignment of responsibilities, the hazard communication system, that is, how is the employer communicating with the employees regarding the hazards that are available, that are present or inherent of their workstation, of their work environment. If we're talking, for instance, about a company that makes hexane, is the employee aware of the fact that hexane is a hazardous substance? Is the employee aware of the fact that they can check how hazardous is the substance to himself or herself by looking over at the safety data sheets? Does the employee know where the safety data sheets are? All these things are covered in there. There needs to be a system for assuring employee compliance with the safe work practices, usually trainings or internal audits. Schedule inspections, that is an evaluation system. There needs to be a system for investigating accidents, procedures for correcting unsafe, unhealthy conditions, safety and health training and instructions, and of course, record keeping and documentation. Now, let's briefly talk about each section. You can always go into the regulations to get the more detailed background. But when it comes to management commitment, that is the assignment of responsibilities, we're talking about who has the authority and responsibility for the employee safety. That needs to be specified from the get-go. Management needs to make it obvious that they're concerned for the safety of the employees by placing priority on any given safety and health issues. So there needs to be a system in place for employees to report these things, and there needs to be some system that follows up on them and there needs to be some kind of preventive or corrective action report to follow up on this. This is necessary to get maximum production and quality. Okay. Now, this commitment must be backed by strong organizational policies, procedures, incentives, and disciplinary actions as necessary to ensure employee compliance with safe and healthful work practices. In other words, if management is not pushing for all these different health and safety policies, then employees might not be incentivized to follow them at all, even though it's for their own good. Some safe and healthful work practices include establishing metrics, that is, the establishment of workplace objectives for accident and illness prevention. So you need to establish concrete objectives, such as, for instance, this year we need to have 10% fewer injuries. We need to reduce the downtime due to poorly maintained equipment. So these objectives establish a concrete thing to follow, which is usually backed by policies. As previously mentioned, there also needs to be a system in place that allows employees to report unsafe conditions. There needs to be a system in place that allows them to do so. Usually an incentive system is best for this to encourage them to actually step up and report these unsafe conditions. But they also need to have the assurance that management will take some kind of action into this. If management is not correcting any kind of unsafe conditions, then the employee is not incentivized to report anything at all. Continuing with this, a company has to allocate resources, that is financial, human, material resources, to identify and control hazards in new and existing operations, to install engineering controls, to purchase personal protection equipment, and to promote and train employees in safety and health. Some other good practices include setting up a good example. That is, if the health and safety coordinator or manager or management, if a given area requires them to use a hard hat, having these people use the hard hat sets an example for the other employees to follow. Now, a good precaution to take into account is that if yourself and or management are not supporting or participating in the program, it's doomed to failure from the start. It is especially important for plant supervisors and field superintendents to set a good example. When it comes to safety communication, your program must include a system for communicating with employees in a form that is readily understandable by all affected employees on matters related to occupational safety and health. So, for instance, when it comes to construction workers, when you have a construction site, it's usually a good practice to have a communication system that is covered in different languages. That is, the communication system that is in place needs to account for the fact that people might speak different languages, and if so, the system must be presented in the information needs to be presented in the language that is spoken by the majority of the people on site. Now, something that is optional for the IIPP, but it's a good practice to have, is a safety committee. You are presumed to be in substantial compliance if the committee meets regularly, but not less than quarterly, and that the committee prepares and makes available to the affected employees written records of the safety and health issues that are discussed by the committee meetings, and that these records are maintained for review by the division upon request. These results have to be reviewed in a periodic schedule, and this committee needs to review investigations of occupational accidents and the causes of incidents resulting in occupational injury to prevent future incidents, of course. The Safety Committee needs to review investigations of all alleged hazardous conditions that are brought to the attention of any committee members. They need to submit recommendations to assist in the evaluation of employee safety suggestions. And upon request of the division, the committee verifies abatement action taken by the employer to abate citations issued by the division. If you elect not to use labor management, safety, and health committees, be prepared to formalize and document your required system for communicating with employees. Thank you.